We all know the mainstream media failed us leading up into this election, but I want to also talk about how social media failed us as well. Every time I do one of these videos, everybody says, but what can we do? I'm going to give you, so what can we do at the end of the video. Everyone knows about Fox News and the issues that it created in terms of embedding people with disinformation over the last 8+ years. But everybody always thought of them as sort of this like gnat in the corner that we didn't really have to deal with. The issue is that Fox News became, for a certain group of people, almost like the New York Times. And let me explain. What used to happen is the New York Times was the paper of record. And so every time you would see a news report on television, or oftentimes when you saw a news report on television, particularly in the last 10 to 20 years, when broadcasters and cable news outlets didn't go out and do their own reporting, they only became pundits, they depended on the New York Times for their content. So you watched Rachel Maddow, she listed whatever the story was in the New York Times. And it wasn't just her, it was everybody. Well, the same thing is true of Fox News for a whole other group of people that most of us probably who are watching me don't interact with. But then what we saw happen over the last 6 months or so is we saw papers like the New York Times and like the Washington Post take a decided turn to the right. And it's been obvious for quite some time that the New York Times has taken a turn toward the right. I mean, even before the last 6 months, they normalized Trump for the last 8 years plus. And then they put out an editorial saying they support Kamala Harris. I mean, it was mind-boggling. At the same time, the Washington Post hired a former Wall Street Journal editor to run the paper. So what did we think was going to happen? That they were suddenly going to remain liberal? No, of course they didn't. And of course, Jeff Bezos, as a billionaire, is going to protect his pocket. No surprise there. At the same time, what was going on is the social media sites were quashing liberal voices. And I've certainly heard it from people here, but it wasn't just here. Honest to God, Meta admitted to it. They said that they were doing it. And it wasn't until after the election they said, oh, oops, sorry, our mistake. Maybe we should reassess this. If you're looking at broadcast media, we have the problem that the stations are owned by conservatives. And I'll do a separate post about the FCC and the difference between broadcast television and networks and station groups. But those stations are very much owned by conservatives. And primarily who was on places like MSNBC were political pundits. Certainly CNN was totally political pundits, and they were both sidesing it all over the place. But even MSNBC, all they had on was political pundits. They didn't need political pundits. They needed media scholars. They needed cult scholars. They needed sociologists to explain why people were being caught in these ecosystems and how real information was going to be able to break through. And add as a final overlay on all of this is what I call brofluencer, which are, basically bro influencers, mostly tied to Silicon Valley. And I talk about this in my book, Hoodwinked. These brofluencer podcasters. And what they do is they invite each other to appear on each other's podcasts. And so it becomes this intricate system of them valorizing each other, them giving each other social proof that these are the people to watch. So what you have is Fox News presenting information that gets picked up by the brofluencers who then disseminate that information, and at the same time, content on the left that may appear on social media sites is being quashed. Okay, so what do you do? Well, you don't go back to watching cable news, and more than 50% of us have said bye to that stuff, right? So what we need to do is find the people who are creating content that have a journalism bent or an expertise that we can rely on to provide good, solid content. Examples I would use on this space who also have sites on places like YouTube, But mark them and subscribe to them. Don't wait for this platform to send them to you. Places I like Under the Desk News, they have a background in journalism that they are using to get information out. Aaron Parnas, oh my God, the guy's a whiz kid, right? And he is tied into politics. He can explain things at a level that other people cannot because he was really in the room. These are just two examples, and I'm sure there are plenty of others. And if you have people you like, drop them into the comments here. Tell us where we can find them, either here or on other places. Because look, this app may disappear by January. It's the only one that is really allowing some of this content to get through. And even this platform hasn't been great all the time. But let's find the people who are going to give us real, researched, solid information. And one last point I want to leave you with. Yuval Noah Harari has a new book out called Nexus, which is all about information systems. He said something that was really important for all of us to bear in mind. There is a difference between information and fact. And what we need to be doing now is paying attention to fact. Find the people who spend the time to give you the information or have the expertise to give you the information. Don't assume that everything that comes across your feed is fact.